Welcome to Mayhem 3 Beta 6. This is an early version of Mayhem 3, a new mod being developed by Jubarbe, everyone's favorite programming panda. And this is just an early showcase of what it's like to get invaded. Now, I don't know how much of this is going to change from now to when the mod releases, but I have my sector here, Guiding Star, that is a former Argon sector. I've actually taken up 3 of their sectors, 2 of which I currently occupy, one is unknown. And I'm well established in this sector. As you can see, I've got stations and it's all set up already. So I've been here for a while. But recently they laid claims to my sector and they announced it, with the big message saying Argon Federation is claiming Guiding Star. So I knew to position my fleet here, but they finally arrived. So they brought an Excalibur, a Colossus, with no fighters in it, unfortunately. Their escort Quasar corvettes and a Mandalay escort. And I think that the Argon fleet has already seen some action because the Mandalay's at half health and they don't really have any fighters. So this may be a lot easier than it normally would be for a full-size battle group. But anyway, I've already begun engaging them. So what I did was I positioned my fleets out of sector. And I have the biggest ship in my fleet is the Xenon Q Corvette. Frigate, sorry. I have 6 of them. And I have one set as the commander, and I have the slowest ship in the fleet as the commander, so all the other ships follow them and the fleet doesn't spread out. Because keeping your fleet together and not staggering your approach is the single greatest thing you can do tactics-wise in this game, especially in Mayhem 3, without jump drives or MLCC or any other things like that. So I positioned my fleets outside of sector, and once they were all ready to go and I'm just about to engage, I teleported in, and I didn't teleport into the fleet commander because that will mess up some of the scripts. So I teleported into the Dragon, which is a random corvette in the fleet. And I haven't taken any losses yet. I may have lost a fighter or two, but I don't really count those because those are so cheap they're basically free. I've got about 3 shipyards running concurrently right now. Not quite non-stop for the 3rd one, but I'm working on getting my production up so I can have 3 running at the same time. And this is my main fleet that I was running a campaign with against the Xenon. I have about 3 more sectors to take before I'm ready to move on to the next phase of Mayhem 3, the post-Xenon parts. But yeah, right now I was waiting to defend against the Argon because I saw they were making a claim. So I laid waste to their corvettes pretty effortlessly, and now my fleet is focusing on this Colossus. But I've noticed that the commander, because he was in the front and leading the charge, he took most of the heat. He's taking hull damage. So the way Mayhem 3 works is it's designed for fleets to be completely automated, and you're not to pay too much. You're not supposed to control every little aspect of them and micromanage them so much because they were built for, macro management on the huge galactic scale, and the NPCs use the same fleet settings and scripts as the player does. So micromanagement like this, retreating a ship that is taking hull damage, is not something that the fleets were designed to do. And they do it, on an individual ship level, but when it comes to big battles like this, you can't really leave it to ships to do it on their own. So that's why I teleported into the commander and flew him back a little bit. So it's just the Mandalay that mysteriously has half its health missing, and the Excalibur. Now, the Excalibur is the Argon Federation Super Tier 3 M2, right? So there's Titan Atlas and then Excalibur. And if this was Mayhem 2, my fleet right here, I maybe would lose 1 or 2 fighters, and that Excalibur would go down in a few seconds. I have an infamous clip from an earlier Mayhem 2 video where a Terran Kyoto battleship goes down to like 6 of my corvettes. It's a total joke. In Mayhem 2, whole hit points were very, very low for all ships, especially M4s, which are dying like 5 shots from like a fighter weapon once their shields fell. But I really like what he did in Mayhem 3 because capital ships especially, their hulls will not go down. They are absolute walls. So my fleet's moving in without me. I'm sitting in the commander. At this point in the battle, I've abandoned the fleet commands and I've just broadcast to all ships to attack the individual targets because I'm sitting in the commander, when I do fleet, attack all enemies in sector, they're just gonna idle around and not really work. But because the battle is so small at this point, there's only 2 enemies left unescorted. I don't mind just breaking the fleet commands and issuing everything manually. It's much better than having everything just idle and not work. So anyway, at this point in Mayhem 2 or Lit Cube or any other mod, that Excalibur would be dead. But this is Mayhem 3. That is actually a mighty warship, which it always should have been. So my fleet doesn't have any ships of the M2 class yet. And the difference between classes is really big in Mayhem 3. So it's got these massive amounts of photon pulse cannons and the incendiary bomb launchers. And it's going to take down a lot of my ships, as you're going to see here. And that, again, wouldn't happen in Mayhem 2 or any other mod. So this is something new that I'm still getting used to. I don't think I could have avoided losses at this point. I mean, I was expecting to lose fighters because I use a lot of cheap fighters in my fleet to try and, for the purpose of laser saturation, right? So lasers are slow in Mayhem 3, so when capital ships are wasting their time shooting fighters, they're going to have a hard time hitting them. And once they do hit them, I don't lose anything. Meanwhile, my capital ships are safe. Anyway, that's the philosophy. I still haven't practiced it quite enough to know how viable it is. So anyway, the commander is getting hit, so I had to bail out for the sake of not getting game over. So I'm like, okay, that commander is going to be lost. And this thing is actually able to take out 2 Qs in this battle. Again, I know it always should have been this way. Qs are pretty much the weakest M7 in the game, and the Excalibur is one of the strongest ships. But in any other mod, you can just cheese it out, jump drives or whatever, and this guy would go down without a fight. So yeah, I'm still experimenting with the best tactics for this. I do lose a lot of fighters, but that's preferred, right? Fighters are so much easier to replace, and they're not really worth much compared to these destroyers these frigates I'm losing. And you can see just how long it's taking to kill the ship. The only real heavy guns I have are the photon artillery arrays on the main guns of the Qs, and those are specialized in hull damage. So laser stats are pretty unique in Mayhem compared to Lit Cube, where they were all just different colors of the same basic guns, pretty much. Where photon artillery arrays do absurd hull damage, but they don't do too much shield damage. But I don't have a lot of ships wielding them just yet, so that Excalibur took forever to go down. But yeah, it basically took my entire fleet to do that, and I'm pretty sure I couldn't have done that if I did not have a fleet of this size. So that's an amazing thing. A huge battleship is able to punch well above, its single, just being alone without an escort, because they had approached in a stagger line, got their escort obliterated, and then the battleship was left alone. And that's just how fleets work. But yeah, I lost 2 frigates in that. I lost a couple corvettes and a whole bunch of fighters, about a dozen fighters. And I've got those all being produced at my 3 shipyards. They'll be replaced quickly. But yeah, that's what an invasion looks like in Mayhem 3. It's a lot smaller than invasions in Mayhem 2. I've never really seen a Mayhem 3 fleet that quite near the size of a Mayhem 2 fleet. In Mayhem 2, the fleets were so big they stretched across the entire sectors, and they had quite a few M2s in there. Mayhem 3, I've only seen about 1 destroyer per fleet, maybe 2 if you count carriers. But I really hope they scale up over time, because if that's the best they can do, I'm still early game relatively. I still haven't even completed the Xenon objective. Then the Argon are going to lose all their territory to me, because my current fleet at this early in the game can probably beat any of their individual fleets, because I haven't seen them get any bigger. So we'll see how Mayhem 3 shapes up to be. But yeah, that's what an invasion looks like in the current state of Mayhem 3. So if you're not being a good neighbor, you have that to look forward to. So just make sure you're prepared.